Good morning, and welcome to the panel titled Student Learning from Curriculum Units Developed in National Seminars. My name is Valerie Schwartz, and I'm a longtime Yale Fellow, the City Representative for Richmond Public Schools, a fourth grade teacher at Mary Mumford Elementary School, as well as the moderator for today's panel. The format for the panel is that the Yale Fellow will introduce the curriculum unit and the student, and then the student will share their experience with you. Following the presentations, we will have time for questions. On the panel today, you will hear from me and my fourth grade student, Elijah Robbins, Brandon Barr from Chicago, and his former student, now a seventh grader, Santiago Padilla, Mike Duty from Delaware, and his 12th grade student, Tyshira Curse, Mark Hartong from San Jose, and his former student, an 11th grader, Ayla Kissick. Without further ado, I will introduce my unit and student. So this summer, I participated in the Alien Earth Seminar with Sir Bonnie Basu and created a curriculum unit for my fourth grade class titled There's No Space Like Home. The curriculum unit focuses on the solar system, but also has a lot of mathematics woven into it. The seminar helped increase my limited knowledge about space, and I became more current with the topic. Our understanding of the solar system has changed quite a bit since I was in school, and the movie E.T. was in theaters, and Pluto was still considered a planet. In seminar, we learned about dwarf planets, exoplanets, and habitability. And now I'll let my extraordinary student, Elijah Robbins, tell you about the unit. Elijah?
Hello, my name is Elijah, and I want to thank my moms, Ms. Schwartz and Yale, for letting me be here today. I'll start my presentation now. At first, our teacher introduced us to the book The Lion of Mars by Jennifer L. Holm to get us in the space mood. It's about a U.S. settlement on Mars. My teacher told us that we'd be doing a space project on Google Slides. I asked a friend of mine, Blake, to be my partner, and we chose Venus as our planet. Here are two fun facts I learned. Did you not know that there's a British website that sells an acre on Venus for $25? Its atmosphere has a pressure 92 times more than the pressure on Earth. After we did our presentation, our teacher said that we'd be making a Play-Doh project of planets. At first, she set up the whole entire thing, but we did some of the math for the science paper. First, we had to cut out the diameters of the planets and sort them from greatest to least. We were trying to find the measurements of how much bigger or smaller each planet was to Earth. We used a calculator to divide the diameter of another planet by Earth's diameter to find the size relative to Earth. So Jupiter's diameter is about 11 times bigger than Earth. We did this for each planet. Then we found how many AUs, or astronomical units, each planet is from the sun. For our model, 1 AU is a meter, which is the distance from the sun to the Earth. We went outside and measured 30 meters, because the furthest planet, Neptune, is 30 AUs away from the sun. We used sidewalk chalk to mark it like a football field. Next day, we made Play-Doh for all the planets. We made 2 batches so everyone could help out. We added dye and kneaded it. The next step was to measure the Play-Doh planets in grams. We made all of them in 4-gram blocks because Earth was 4 grams. We listed the planets in order from the sun. Jupiter was 11 times the size of Earth, so we made 11 blocks of 4 grams. We made the tape diagrams with Play-Doh blocks. Our teacher told us that we'd make the Play-Doh blocks into a planet. After that, we went outside to put the planet on our model. Unfortunately, this guy was walking down the sidewalk and he didn't notice our class waving at him. He smushed Mars. He looked at the bottom of his shoe and tried to wipe it off, and then he just walked away. Half of Mars was on his shoe. The model showed us that even on the sidewalk, Neptune is really far away from the sun. In space, 1 AU is 150,000 kilometers, or 93 million miles. If we ever want to get to these faraway places, we're going to need rockets. So we made rockets. First, we made a diagram of what materials we wanted for our rockets. Then once we made the rockets, next day, we went to launch them. Once we had them fly, we figured out that trapezoid fins were the best. The rocket with those fins went much further than the others. It was exciting because you didn't know how far yours would go until you tried it. Unfortunately, the second time we tried this, our table's rocket went on top of the building. After that, my teacher said that we'd be doing another Google Slides on moons and dwarf planets. I had the same partner, Blake. We had to compare Titan to the moon. Titan is the second largest moon and it orbits Saturn. It is bigger than the planet Mercury. And it's extraordinary because it has rivers, lakes, and seas on its surface. On Titan, its atmosphere is so like the Earth's that you don't need a spacesuit. You just need an oxygen mask and something to keep you warm. Titan is cool because it might be able to have a life. These lessons were different because science was our main focus, because we didn't have much time before coming to Yale. We researched planets and moons. It was good because I really didn't know many facts about our solar system. It was fun to learn something new. Thank you for listening. Space out.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Brandon Barr. I teach 6th grade reading, writing, and social studies at Mark Twain Elementary in Chicago. And I have a small confession to make. I am a Barbara, not a Barbara from Delaware. But for those of you who watch Abbott Elementary, you know what that means. And for those of you who don't, you need to start watching because it's a really good TV show. So Barbara is a veteran teacher. She runs a tight ship. She has a clear vision of what needs to be done to get her students to learn. And she's also slightly suspicious when her district comes up with new ideas intended to revolutionize teaching. During my 17 years teaching, my teaching evolves. It grows. It prospers over time when I'm in community with others. There is no silver bullet or simple fix to changing educational outcomes. All of our schools face very complex challenges. But I'm certain that meaningful change will not happen in isolation. Community is the key. As teachers, we know this to be true because we are so intentional at the start of every school year to foster strong learning communities within our classrooms. Y&I has been my learning community for these last 10 years. A couple years ago, I participated in a seminar called Adaptation, Literature, Film, and Society, led by Brigitte Pluker. Our work that year focused on cinematic adaptation and translation from a literary text to film. So you're taking a text that's comprised from words and changing it into a visual text, a text that tells a story in images. When a novel becomes a film, there's a change in medium. With that change in medium, what we explored in seminar was how filmmakers, in the process of translating, interpreted a text. The unit that I wrote about the play and film The Miracle Worker, while participating in that seminar, positions my students to think about the choices made in translation between the mediums, between taking the literary text across to film. With every passing year, I refine my work and my thinking. I have to give a small shout out to Dudley, who's wiping his eyes right now. Just 2 nights ago, I was finally able to watch a film that he recommended. So we were sitting down, shoot balling ideas. What can I do a unit on? Because I've been participating for so long, I'm basically only teaching the curriculum units that I've developed here now. So I have to think, how can I be creative to insert something new? Just a passing comment. He said, there's a version of The Miracle Worker that's set in India, right? Because he has this wealth of knowledge about world cinema. And of course, I had no clue, because when am I watching Bollywood films? I'm lucky I can get to work every day. So a small note in my notebook from a brief conversation will result in an important extension activity in the unit that Santiago will speak about in a moment. The small ripples that happen at Y&I become great waves when we return to our classrooms. I don't teach to the standards. I don't like that phrase. I treat the standards that I'm supposed to teach as a mandate. When I write, students will be able to, and something behind that phrase, I mean it. Like Annie Sullivan, who's the protagonist in The Miracle Worker, I'm tenacious in my approach to ensure that students learn what they're supposed to learn when they're entrusted to my care. My hope is that you see a glimpse of this in Santiago's thinking. At this time, I'd like to invite him to speak. Thank you.
Good morning. The Miracle Worker unit is written with us students in mind. It's written to connect with us readers and viewers of the play. As one of those students, I can say this unit does connect with me. I may not be blind nor deaf like Helen, but I still connect to this unit and the story of Helen Keller. The reason I connect to this play and unit is because it greatly shows our young minds many big and meaningful concepts. The concepts of grief, pain, failure, struggles, and even triumphs. Throughout the play, we see Annie's struggles while teaching Helen and Helen's personal struggles being both blind and deaf. We see their hardships together and how they grow as student and teacher. We also see how the family deals with Helen before Annie comes into Helen's life. We see them become closer to one another through their hardships with each other and eventually become fond of one another. We see change and development in people in this unit, and it was very meaningful. This all makes me understand what true hardships are and makes me connect to this unit. Comparing this to other topics I've learned about, this one is quite unique to other topics I've studied. Its uniqueness stems from us looking into the meaning of every little detail that is put into this play. We find the deeper meaning of specific parts in this play, and we were able to connect with this play and its characters. One of these things being when we looked into the opening credits. It's a scene that was added by the filmmaker and not in the original script of the play, and I think it was a great decision on the filmmaker's part. I say this because it adds more meaning to the play. The scene itself is of Helen walking into some hanging sheets and ends up wrapping herself in them. She is strapped. I think this scene says a lot, even though there are no words spoken. This scene shows a lot, although there wasn't much to see. Helen feels stuck in life. She feels trapped in this world due to her deafness and lack of vision. And this scene perfectly represents that. The sheet she gets stuck in represents her lonely life as a deaf and blind person. It represents Helen's life before Annie had begun teaching her. Then there's a dinner table scene. It is quite literally just a fight scene between Annie and Helen. It is just them fighting. No words are spoken in this scene. The scene shows Annie trying to show discipline to Helen since Helen's family pitied her because of her disabilities. This being Helen's first show of discipline, it was a great struggle for Annie. Reading this scene is not just boring, but it lacks to show what is actually happening compared to the film. In the film, we see these stage directions at work. We see how much Annie struggles to teach Helen. This scene being the biggest in the play to represent how Annie struggles teaching Helen. Another part of the play and the film that I would not have picked up on without Mr. Bart was the symbolism of keys. Around the beginning of the film, when Helen locks Annie in the room and hides the key, first hiding in her mouth, then in the water pump. Although there doesn't seem to be any symbolism in this specific scene, Mr. Barr helps us understand there is. The symbolism being Helen locking herself from Annie, not allowing Annie to teach her, and hiding the key that does so. The symbolism of keys doesn't just end there though. At the end of the movie, after Helen has spoken her first word, water, she hands Annie the key. This scene is also added by the filmmaker, which goes to show how much the filmmaker wanted to express the story's symbolism. The scene represents Helen finally unlocking herself to Annie by handing her the key. Although we had looked into other works of literature and filmmaking, we never went through it like we did while going through The Miracle Worker. The uniqueness also came from the way the teacher teaches it, and I credit Mr. Barr, my teacher at the time, who did a good job at teaching this unit to us students. He taught the unit enthusiastically, and his enthusiasm spread onto us. Because of this, we were able to have fun while learning the unit. He taught other units, of course, and did a good job doing so, but it was unlike the way he taught this specific unit. He helped every single one of us students understand the meanings and messages this topic teaches us. Mr. Barr also emphasized the idea of us looking into meanings of specific scenes. Overall, Mr. Barr was a great teacher and good at helping us students learn new things. The unit and his great teaching skills made the experience quite interesting and fun. Studying The Miracle Worker impacted me greatly by getting me to think about hardships and struggles. I learned that even though there will be hard times as I try to achieve something, just like Annie tried her best to teach Helen, I will eventually succeed and my hard work will not be in vain, just like Annie was eventually able to teach Helen. I was taught to look into the meaning of things, that even some of the simplest things can have great meaning, like the opening credit scene added by the filmmaker, the scenes with the key, and the dinner table scene. I learned a lot in this unit and I hope to come across other units like this in the future. I appreciate being back here today and being here with you all. It's been quite the experience. Thank you.
All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Mike Duty. I'm a science teacher at William Penn High School in the Colonial School District in Newcastle, Delaware. This morning, I have the pleasure of talking to you about my unit that I wrote in Jordan Petchia's Fires, Floods, and Drought seminar, titled Newcastle and Climate Change. So just real quickly before I hand it over to Shaira, I'm going to talk to you real briefly about the unit. So I started this unit with the goal of helping students develop a better understanding of what climate change was, specifically with a focus on how it is currently and will in the future impact our community. The goal being, climate change is this abstract thing. We think about it, happening by 2100, and it's abstract, and it's not at our front doorsteps. But that's the wrong type of thinking. It actually is. Climate has already changed, and it's only going to get worse. So some of the things that we did in this activity were a greenhouse effect lab. So students dropped Alka-Seltzer into an Erlenmeyer flask and then measured the temperature over time. And it's a really easy demonstration, but it's very powerful to show what the greenhouse effect does. From there, we moved into a climate impacts mapping activity where students read excerpts from several different texts, and then we made maps to show the visual impacts of climate change. And then I think the crown jewel of this unit was the climate data analysis. So students actually looked at historical data dating back to the 1940s for the Newcastle area and looked at things like temperatures in July and January, rainfall, and then also sea level rise. And then they also did an investigation of what adaptation and mitigation strategies would look like. But you don't want to hear from me. You're here to listen to student experiences. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my 12th grade student, Taishira Curse. Take it away.
Hi, everyone. My name is Taishira Curse. I am a senior at William Penn High School, and my college/career aspiration has got to be that I want to be an environmental chemist when I get older. maybe work for NASA, who knows? Yeah. So I'm going to give you a little overview of our unit. So we discussed climate change. We studied what it is, why it's happening, and how do we know that this is happening. So to figure out how we know this is happening, we did a data analysis, as Mr. Duty said, and we studied climate data from Newcastle and saw that our summers are unfortunately getting hotter. We have more extreme heat than we used to. We get more rainfall, and our sea level has risen significantly. Not good things at all, unfortunately. And so as well, we did a mapping activity, which he also said, which we read excerpts from the National Climate Assessment to learn about how different regions in the US are impacted by climate change. And the biggest impacts in the Northeast have to do with sea level rise, hotter summers, and changing precipitation patterns. We also took this data and we turned it into graphs. We looked at the planet, the country, and Delaware. So here we have our July temperature anomaly. And as you can see through the trend line, you can go next. Okay. Our trend line that as the years and the decades go on, temperatures keep rising in Fahrenheit degrees. So this is for July, and in extreme precipitation events in Newcastle, precipitation is also rising within the trend line. And then, come on. You see what I'm seeing when I say that we're struggling with sea level rise? Please tell me you see the problem. Thank you. All right, so here is our mapping activity. So when we read the National Climate Assessment, we picked out what we believed was the most important impact from the reading. And we took these, we wrote them on sticky notes, and we put them in the regions of the what we were reading about where this impact was taking place. So this is the US. This was all of our work. This is Delaware. And then we did globally, I believe. Yeah, right here. Pretty cool, actually, to look at my work. And then we did an activity that stood out the most to me. That's got to be the most heart-wrenching thing ever, was this book that we read called the 2084 Report, which is a fictional account of what life is like in a climate-altered future. However, it reads like a nonfiction. So I'm going to read this excerpt from the chapter called Tuvalu. We burned almost no coal or oil. Experts here at the museum say that Tuvalu emitted far less carbon dioxide than a small New Zealand town of the same population. But as the seas began to rise, Tuvalu's problem was geography. Our highest point was about 15 feet above sea level. And at my birth, most of Tuvalu was less than 6.5 feet above sea level. If the sea kept on rising, we had no higher land to retreat to. When we learned that scientists were predicting the sea would rise by 3 feet or more, we knew if they were right, Tuvalu was doomed. So Tuvalu is a city that contributes the least to climate change, but they are likely to suffer the most with climate change, unfortunately. So all of this to say, to prevent this from becoming a reality, we absolutely need to do something about this, which is when we started discussing mitigation and adaptation strategies. And the only mitigation strategy that matters is, simply put, we need to stop burning fossil fuels. We need to stop burning fossil fuels. It's easier said than done, but it has to be done. This unit mattered to me because it didn't just feel like another assignment. It has a connection to my future career in environmental chemistry. And it's something that means so much to me that I can quite literally give a 40-minute presentation on this without preparation. Not saying I'm unprepared now, just saying. But I absolutely enjoyed this unit, and I want to thank Mr. Duty again so much for letting me come here and allowing me to present your work. So thank you so much for coming to my TED Talk.
You're seeing all of us here struggle with it makes me chuckle because you all expected us to run Zoom classes. It's difficult to just close a slide and change to the next presentation. My name is Mark Hartung, and I'm honored to be here today in this great company of students. In 2019, I participated in a seminar led by Ian Shapiro, which was titled American Democracy and the Promise of Justice. And it was an apt title because in the United States, in many cases, we have the promise of justice, but not always justice itself. And the problem is not just in the United States, but in many democracies, trying to expand rights and trying to find a way for voters to take the control that they should have and translate that into some level of control that they seem to not have or not want to exercise. Leaving many groups in many democracies trapped in a system of majority rule, where the people who exercise their rights the most tend to accumulate rights at the sometimes expense of others. I had the great fortune to start my career by teaching middle school. And in middle school, students have a developing sense, a very keen developing sense of what is right and what is wrong. And there's often a greater outrage when they are introduced to injustice than one might find in the later grades. So in order to take these ideas and turn them into a curriculum unit, I decided that we would look at an example from the past and then contrast that with an example from the present. So we talked about the abolitionists and the women's suffragettes and how they formed a coalition to work together and expand rights right up until the moment when the 15th Amendment left out the right for women to vote. And then that coalition fell apart. Similarly, in modern society, we have many coalitions that are fighting for rights of the LGBTQ plus community, yet in many cases, rights of transgender individuals are left behind in that struggle. And so my students were able to look at both of those issues and make those comparisons. Students that are in middle school can be very exuberant and excitable, very spirited, and sometimes a little bit silly. And my student was no exception. But this student also stood out because Ayla was also very thoughtful and serious, very inquisitive, and very hopeful for the future. And it was a privilege to have her in my classroom. And now that we have both moved on to high school, I wish I had more students like her in 11th and 12th grade as well. So she's going to talk to you a little bit about her experience going through this unit and being in my classroom. And I know you'll enjoy her comments. Thank you.
Good morning. I want to start by sincerely thanking everyone for their time this lovely morning. I am Ayla Kakisik, and I attend Abraham Lincoln High School in San Jose, California as an 11th grader. I had the greatest privilege of attending Mr. Hartung's social studies course way back in the golden days of 8th grade. In comparison to any other class, the curriculum that was made by Mr. Hartung and helped shape by the Y&I program and presented to us provided my classmates and I with a completely unique experience that left me personally with a lasting impression. Me being a huge visual learner, I retain knowledge best when it is in the form of images, graphs, tables, charts, maps, colors, and diagrams. As I progressed through my education, I noticed that this aspect is largely less seen in classes, which makes learning more difficult for students like myself. In the courses that I'm taking now, teachers often just spew words at us without giving it any thought or purpose, which disconnects my classmates and I from the will and enjoyment of learning. Class periods every day include a piece of paper being given to use where we have to read and summarize a few paragraphs, or if we get lucky, we get a slideshow filled with more words that have no true meaning or connection behind them. But in that 8th grade class with Mr. Hartung, there was a variety of visual and hands-on learning used almost every day. From lessons where we were able to create our own posters to lessons where we got to read interesting graphic novels as a class that kept everyone engaged because we were able to collaborate and share our thoughts with classmates, which I wish I can keep experiencing now because it truly opened a new door for me. I never realized till then how important some of the stuff we learn is because I never had a teacher that taught in the way Mr. Hartung did that year. And it enabled us to express our creativity, enriching our educational experience, and it inspired us to think outside of the box, which influenced participation and question asking. As you may know, history lessons aren't particularly interesting by students, but I can say that these lessons that were given made me want to learn further and more in depth with certain topics. Considering the time, we learned about the divided dollar simulation to show how difficult it is for different groups in society to work together. Women and abolitionists worked together to expand rights right before and after the Civil War. But the abolitionists believed that African Americans should have the right to vote before women. Therefore, the 15th Amendment did not include both groups. I enjoyed learning about this because it really connects the view of people and ourselves nowadays. We were always able to work together and generate new ideas as a class, which is what helped me participate. When feedback corrections that we completed in class came around, I felt super confident about what I knew, and it really helped me understand what the lesson was truly about. We would be called upon, and if we didn't respond correctly, we would receive a full explanation of what went wrong, how to repair it, and why. Like I was saying earlier, group work was a really big part of our learning experience. We got to discuss ideas in small groups, and working together allowed us to combine our views and our ideas from different angles. For example, when we discussed the House's passage of a law outlawing discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. The law forbade discrimination against lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender individuals in both public and private settings, while also granting them civil rights in civil rights and protections in the workplace, medical facilities, and welfare services. Some people believed that this was essential because the LGBTQ+ people endured outrageous and immoral discrimination, but others disagreed because they thought they were concerned with the safety of women and girls. In order to show the population of smaller groups fighting for rights made it necessary for groups to join forces with others to establish a majority, we were put into teams where we got to create several groups with various cards labeled woman, LGBTQ, immigrant, and etc. We shared ideas and opinions and got to find a big picture with our teams. I found it interesting to learn about it because it really helped me understand how everything has come together to create laws and amendments that have brought us to where we are now. And it made me realize how significant these issues were to people both then and now, and I think these teachings will be helpful to us throughout our lives. For instance, when we learned about the 14th Amendment, it stated that no state may revoke someone's life, liberty, or property without providing them a fair trial, and that no one could be denied the same protection under the law. People are still treated differently today, notably based on their skin tone, as this was evident from what occurred with George Floyd back in May 2020. We learned about our rights and when we can stand out for ourselves as the course progressed. I recall reading a graphic book in class for a discussion on the evidence, which was not only entertaining and engaging, but incredibly enlightening. I recall that mandatory sentencing was extremely unjust since it might result in the same term being given to a leader of a drug conspiracy and accessory, which was not fair. A story that really struck with me was Kemba Smith. Smith was sentenced to 30 years because of her boyfriend's illegal drug activities. She was abused by him, mentally and physically. She tried to leave him, but he didn't let her. When they found him dead, they took her to prison only because she was forced by him to participate in his drug activities. Due to mandatory minimum sentencing, the court was unable to take into consideration that Smith was being participated in Hall's illegal activities, such as delivering money to his associates, out of fear for her life. Smith was a first-time offender who committed no violent crimes and received 30 years, and she wasn't even 24. After going through these lessons, I felt more confident in what I stand for as a strong young woman in this generation. Over the course of the year, I learned things that I am positive will be remarkable and helpful in whatever lies ahead of me. I'd like to thank you all for giving me the time, and I'd like to give a huge thanks to Mr. Hartungs for everything that he has done and taught me. Thank you.
Even though you just gave them a round of applause, they did a wonderful job, these students up here. So let's give them another round of applause. And let's also thank the families for their support and for allowing them to come. And the Yale National Initiative for giving them this opportunity and this wonderful experience.